in the headlines of this hour on VTV News. Party General Secretary and State President Tô Lâm meets with U.S. President. And Vietnam emerges as a destination for tech startups. In our world news, France and the U.S. proposed 21-day Lebanon ceasefire.
Broadcasting from Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam. VTV News starts right now.
Good afternoon. It is 3 p.m. local time, and you're tuning in to VTV News. I'm Huyền Trân with the top stories. Party General Secretary and State President Tô Lâm met with U.S. President Joe Biden. The Vietnamese leader emphasized Vietnam's historical turning point and new era of growth, reaffirming the country's commitment to an independent, self-reliant foreign policy, while also viewing the U.S. as a key strategic partner. U.S. President Biden congratulated Party General Secretary and State President Tô Lâm on his new role and reaffirmed U.S. support for a strong, independent, and prosperous Vietnam. Both leaders agreed to enhance cooperation, particularly in the economy, trade, investment, high-tech industries, semiconductor development, and human resources training. They also committed to strengthening collaboration in regional and international forums. U.S. President Biden highlighted the country's desire to work with Vietnam on maintaining peace, stability, freedom of navigation and aviation in the East Sea, as well as addressing climate change and other global challenges. Now, after concluding activities in the United States, Party General Secretary and State President Tô Lâm, accompanied by his spouse, arrived in Havana on Wednesday night, beginning a state visit to Cuba. The visit was made at the invitation of Cuban Communist Party First Secretary and President Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez and his spouse. High-ranking Cuban officials, Vietnamese diplomats, and representatives of the Vietnamese community in Cuba welcomed the delegation at Jose Marti International Airport. This marks Party General Secretary and State President Tô Lâm first visit to Cuba since assuming his role, highlighting the importance of Vietnam-Cuba relations. Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính attended a conference on Thursday morning to announce planning initiatives and promote investment in Binh province. To effectively implement the provincial planning and bring up practical benefits to the people, the Prime Minister proposed the three pioneers approach. First, pioneering connections between the economy and various regions, countries, and international markets, with a focus on developing green transportation. Second, pioneering in the digital, green, and circular economies, particularly by advancing digital transformation and sustainable practices. Third, pioneering collaboration with the business community to establish new generation industrial parks that are green, digital, high-tech, and smart. The Prime Minister praised Duong for its leadership in investment promotion and attraction. He also urged the province to enhance its communication and collaboration with businesses. Now, during the 37th session, the National Assembly Standing Committee convened on Thursday morning to discuss the government's report on citizen reception, complaint handling, and administrative denunciation processes. Currently, only 45 out of 63 localities have submitted data, making it challenging to assess the overall situation. The committee urged the government to publicly disclose a list of high-performing and underperforming places and individuals. Additionally, it recommended developing software to manage and filter petitions and letters more effectively. Anticipating a potential increase in land and environment-related complaints and denunciations in 2025, the committee requested that the government closely monitor the situation and propose preemptive measures to prevent complex issues from arising. Now, according to the recently released Global Startup Ecosystem Index 2024, Vietnam's startup ecosystem has shown positive growth momentum, ranking among the top 12 destinations in the Asia-Pacific region for tech startups. Economic stability and supportive policies are currently the main factors attracting more tech-savvy entrepreneurs to start their businesses in Vietnam.
After graduating from the University of Illinois in the United States, Mark Marquez ventured to Southeast Asia in search of startup opportunities. Recognizing Vietnam's market potential, he launched his business there earlier this year.
Actually, Vietnam is an incredibly dynamic market, especially for tech startups. So the country has a young, tech-savvy population that's ready for innovations. And for me, starting my company here, Skin Match, in Vietnam, made sense. There's a growth potential. It's massive.
For startup entrepreneurs, an attractive market draws them in to explore. But it's the dynamic and creative workforce that proves crucial in keeping them there to develop their business ideas.
Demographic factor means the population is also very important for the startup and all the business, because that means population, that means exactly showing up to the market size. Vietnam people is very, very urgent in any time. That's one of the factors why I'm choosing Vietnam.
According to the 2024 Global Innovation Index report by the World Intellectual Property Organization, Vietnam ranks 12th in the Asia-Pacific region for tech startup indexes. A recent study by Binh and Company shows that Vietnam also leads Southeast Asia in attracting long-term investment, with 529 million USD poured into the tech startup sector in 2023. Analysts predict that this capital flow will increase by 83% between 2025 and 2030.
Vietnam's strategic location and growth potential make it an attractive hub for Korean companies. Vietnam serves as a critical gateway to the broader Southeast Asia market.
Vietnam is a huge market, 100 million people. The AI direction, the semiconductor direction, it all sounds positive. It all sends a good message to the world. Vietnam is open. Vietnam would like to be more advanced, more like technology-based, compete with others based on technology. It's all good.
According to statistics from the Ministry of Science and Technology, Vietnam currently boasts over 3,000 tech startups, with 11 valued at more than 100 million USD. Experts predict that as Vietnam's economy continues to grow, despite global fluctuations, the influx of tech startups to the country will likely increase in the coming years.
Implementing the Prime Minister's direction on supporting economic recovery, 32 banks have launched preferential loan packages with a total value of more than $16.4 billion. Interest rates have been reduced by 0.5 to 2% for both old and new loans. This capital injection, along with other support measures, is expected to aid the recovery of individuals and businesses.
This bank has planned to reduce interest rates for both existing and new loans of customers affected by Typhoon Yagi, including unsecured loans. Capital serves as a lifebuoy to support individuals, households, and businesses in rebuilding from the aftermath.
We will immediately reduce interest rates by 1% for long-term loans and 0.5% for short-term loans, depending on the customer's financial situation. For unsecured loans, we reduce even more, up to 4%. New customers will benefit from a 1% reduction.
In addition to reducing interest rates, banks also offer exemptions and reductions on interest payable, allow debt extensions, and adjust debt repayment terms. These measures help customers avoid being classified in the overdue debt group.
The debt structure supports a one-year extension, then it will be balanced according to the financial situation and debt repayment ability of customers. This helps customers overcome difficulties and avoid production stagnation and bad debt.
According to the Vietnam Banks Association, there is a large capital demand from business households and enterprises, especially during the year-end peak season. Therefore, banks must prepare resources to promptly meet this loan demand.
there is still ample capital space and growth potential. The State Bank has also announced that credit allocations from institutions not fully utilizing their credit limits will be redistributed to those that have exhausted theirs.
Banks will continue to review and introduce more targeted support packages for specific industries and sectors that require additional time to recover their production and business operations.
Currently, all major industrial parks in northern provinces and cities affected by Typhoon Yagi have resumed operations. Many FDI enterprises have scheduled overtime shifts to compensate for production disruptions, ensuring order fulfillment and sustained growth.
In the aftermath of Typhoon Yagi, this technology company concentrated on completing final preparations for the scheduled launch of its new facility.
With support from local authorities, we are confident that the factory will be operational by the end of September. We will be on schedule and ramp up production for the year-end period.
High-tech investment has been a key trend for FDI this year. Notably, Amcor Group, the world's largest semiconductor manufacturer, increased its investment in Vietnam by over $1 billion in June, 11 years ahead of schedule.
We surveyed multiple locations and ultimately chose Vietnam for its robust ecosystem. The Provincial People's Council issued Resolution 05, approving support for teachers and students.
Realized FDI Vietnam over the past 8 months is estimated at $14.15 billion, the highest in 5 years.
Promoting Vietnam to investors involves leveraging social media, documentation, outreach through associations, and organizing specialized meetings and seminars.
Our exports grew by 16%, with the FDI sector contributing nearly 14%. The PMI index has remained above 50 points for 5 consecutive months, reflecting a rise in orders and production in Vietnam.
This year, Vietnam aims to attract 39 to 40 billion USD in FDI, double the current level. International organizations have demonstrated strong investor confidence in Vietnam's business climate, backed by FDI inflows, combined with the government's determination to achieve 7% GDP growth.
Vietnam is seeing significant opportunities to boost wooden furniture exports to the UK. In the first 9 months of this year, Vietnam's wood and forestry product exports reached over $12.1 billion, a 17% increase compared to the same period last year, according to the Forestry Department of the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. Wooden furniture remains the main export product, particularly to the UK, accounting for over 91% of the total wood product exports to this market. The Vietnam-UK Free Trade Agreement plays a key role by offering substantial tariff benefits, making Vietnamese wood products more price competitive. Vietnam secured 2 rice bids totaling nearly 60,000 tons in Indonesia's September rice tender. Now, out of the 15 lots, King Green Company won 2 with a bid price of $548 per ton. Now, despite this success, Vietnam's rice stock is currently low as the summer-autumn harvest near its end. And additionally, global rice prices remain relatively low. By the end of August, Vietnam had exported over 6.15 million tons of rice, valued at $3.85 billion. Now, before we move on to other important updates, let's take a look at the foreign exchange rates of today, September 26. Coming up next on VTV News. Coastal provinces unleash all-out campaigns against IUU fishing. And medicinal plants help ethnic people escape poverty. Now moving on to other news, southern provinces are intensifying efforts to combat illegal, unreported and unregulated or IUU fishing. In Kienzang, the province with the largest number of fishing vessels in the country, authorities are expediting the installation of seafood traceability software, increasing patrols and strictly handling violations. Other provinces are also boosting awareness campaigns and requiring fishermen to sign commitments against illegal fishing. Strict measures are in place to prevent vessels without proper documentation from setting sail. Now, as of September, timber and wood exports have exceeded $12 billion, marking a 17% increase compared to the same period last year. However, Typhoon Yagi has threatened the northern region, a key source for wood chips, wood pellets, and the plywood processing industry. At a recent conference on forestry recovery, maintaining the supply chain emerged as a critical issue for all stakeholders.
According to the Vietnam Timber and Forest Products Association, 200 wood chip, wood pellet, and plywood enterprises have had their infrastructure and tons of products destroyed. It's estimated that the export value of these products in 2024 could decrease by about $300 million USD.
Many areas are still clearing land, while large factories in Bac Giang and Hanoi have resumed operations but lack raw materials. For the past month, factories have nearly halted production, leaving workers without income, unable to export goods, and impacting business finances. Therefore, we propose extending the debt repayment period for these companies.
Enterprises should have a plan to find raw materials from other places, such as purchasing locally grown wood, reducing the export of wood materials, and increasing the import of suitable raw materials.
In recent years, Japanese, South Korean, and EU markets have favored Vietnamese plywood and pellet products due to their smokeless burning properties. Therefore, the immediate solution is to implement a mechanism for purchasing fallen trees. This approach would both minimize damage to forest owners and ensure the quality of raw materials.
These three product groups contribute over 30% to our exports, equivalent to 5.5 to 6 billion USD. We've mobilized businesses to support each other, and in the coming months, they'll need to foster better cooperation with farmers and foreign partners.
The forestry sector will prepare about 200 million high-quality seedlings of suitable species for the upcoming forest planting season.
By the end of this year, Khánh Hòa province expects to eliminate all makeshift houses for poor households in mountainous areas. Poor households can access not only state-supported funds, but also preferential credit through the National Target Program for Socio-Economic Development in mountainous areas. This meaningful resource has encouraged people to build sturdy homes. More to follow.
With state support of $3,200, she borrowed an additional $1,600 from preferential credit sources. Combined with her savings, she was able to build the house she has dreamt of all her life.
In the past, I lived in an old house that leaked a lot. Now that I have this house, I'm very grateful to the government for supporting me.
According to Government Decree number 28 of 2022, poor households can borrow up to $1,600 from the Social Policy Bank at a low interest rate of 0.3% per year, with a loan term of up to 15 years.
We have advised the Provincial People's Committee to allocate additional capital. This ensures people have both matching capital and loans from social policy banks.
More than 900 ethnic households in Khánh Hòa province has received loans to support housing construction, totaling over $1.4 million.
The central government and the province provided support of $3,200. People all responded and contributed an additional $1,600 from the policy bank.
According to this year's plan, Khánh Hòa province aims to build 1,300 new houses for poor households and repair 1,500 houses for near-poor households. As of now, the majority of these construction and repair projects have been completed.
Ethnic people in Tumorong District, Kon Tum Province, have risen above poverty and become prosperous by cultivating medicinal plants. This success stems from a movement to change ways of thinking and working methods in ethnic areas. Thanks to state support programs and local authorities, ethnic people can harness the region's potential and advantages and gradually transforming their lives.
Son's family was once impoverished. Encouraged by local authorities and supported with initial capital from the Social Policy Bank, Son decided to grow medicinal herbs. Currently, his family has nearly 5,000 Ngọc ginseng plants, ranging from 4 to 10 years old.
At first, I was afraid to borrow money because it was risky. I was afraid that if I planted ginseng, it would die. But we decided to take out a loan. Now we have our own ginseng farms.
So far, Tumorong District has planted over 2,300 hectares of Ngọc ginseng. Thanks to ginsengs and other medicinal plants, many ethnic people here have not only escaped poverty, but also become wealthy.
In 2020, I borrowed 4,000 USD to buy the ginseng. Now my farm is 2 years old. It's made my life better.
We want people to further develop Ngọc ginseng. The district continues to call on businesses to invest in growing ginseng and processing facilities to develop deeply processed products from ginseng.
Medicinal plants, spearheaded by Ngọc ginseng, have transformed the lives of ethnic people in this region. The locality aims to become a national hub for medicinal plant cultivation and a major production center for the country by 2030.
Coming up next in our world news. France and the U.S. propose a 21-day Lebanon ceasefire. And OECD upgrades global growth forecast. Now moving on to our world news. France and the United States on Wednesday proposed a 21-day ceasefire to allow for negotiations in Lebanon after days of deadly strikes by Israel. The proposal was announced by France at an emergency session of the UN Security Council shortly after talks between U.S. President Joe Biden and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron at the UN. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said the content of the proposal would be made public soon, and he expected both Israel and Hezbollah to accept the proposal soon to protect civilians and allow diplomatic talks to begin. He also stressed the urgency for all parties involved to engage in a path of de-escalation of the conflict. Previously, Israel said it welcomed diplomacy in Lebanon, but declared that it would pursue the goal of weakening Hezbollah. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, on Wednesday raised its forecast for global economic growth to a steady 3.2% for both this year and the next. This increase comes as inflation continues to cool and central banks gradually cut interest rates. The new forecast is 0.1 percentage points higher than the previous one released in May. And for the Eurozone, the OECD projects GDP growth of 0.7% this year, accelerating to 1.3% next year. In contrast, the U.S. growth rate is expected to slow to 2.6% this year and further to 1.6% next year. The OECD also noted that improving real incomes and looser monetary policy in many economies will help strengthen demand. However, the organization emphasized that many governments need to raise property and environmental taxes while reining in spending to address higher debt levels. Now, in Germany, representatives of car manufacturers at a meeting with the German Minister of Economy earlier this week asked the government to quickly take measures to support the market. The sharp decline in electric car sales in Germany, coupled with an overly strict timeline for reducing vehicle emissions, is pushing a major German industry towards crisis.
Germany's auto industry faces intense pressure due to declining demand for electric cars. Volkswagen, known for luxury brands like Bentley, Bugatti, Lamborghini, Audi, and Porsche, as well as popular models like Golf, Skoda, and C, has announced production cuts and factory closures for the first time in its 80-year history. Last weekend, the German Minister of Economy made a personal visit to a Volkswagen factory at risk of closure.
Factories need to be kept open. I can't confirm or comment on statistics. I received different data yesterday. Cost-cutting doesn't mean laying off workers and closing factories. It is possible to cut costs and keep factories open.
At a meeting on Monday afternoon, that car manufacturers asked the German government for indirect support through bonuses or tax breaks for car buyers. Since last year, the German government has stopped subsidizing electric car purchases. Without these subsidies, electric cars cannot compete with gasoline-powered vehicles.
We saw that last year. The government subsidy for electric car buyers was cancelled overnight. Immediately after that, the number of car orders dropped sharply. The reintroduction of the subsidy is the only way to strengthen the German car industry.
Based on the current roadmap, the German automotive industry is unlikely to meet the 2025 car emission standards. This challenge is part of a broader decline in the sector over the past decade. Since 2018, German car production has decreased by 25%.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned on Wednesday, September 25th, that rising sea levels threaten to create a rising tide of misery for millions. He highlighted the increasing likelihood of intense storm surges, coastal erosion, and coastal flooding. Speaking at a summit on the threats posed by rising sea levels, he emphasized that around 900 million people live in low-lying coastal areas. These rising sea levels lead to higher tides, escalating the risk of violent storm surges, coastal erosion, and flooding. Industries such as fishing, agriculture, and tourism will be hit the hardest. According to the UN, 5 island nations, the Maldives, Tuvalu, the Marshall Islands, Nauru, and Kiribati, could become uninhabitable by 2100, potentially creating 600,000 stateless climate refugees. And as usual, let's move on to the weather forecast. And that's all the news we have for this hour. To rewatch our program, you can download our mobile app VTVgo or check out our YouTube channel, VTV4Go. Thank you for watching and see you next time.